Brandis, as Russian ground forces advance in Ukraine, experts are watching how warfare may play out online. They're pointing to a powerful new data wiping form of malware designed by Russian hackers, as well as the anonymous hacker group's recent declaration of war against Russia. So how might Russia retaliate against Western sanctions via the internet? Joining us are Stel Valavanis, CEO of Onshore Security, and Vahid Bezadan, Assistant Professor of Data Science at the University of New Haven. Welcome both of you to Chicago tonight. Stel Valavanis, I'll start with you. What kind of cyber hacking activity have we seen in this conflict, both leading up to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and since?
Well, let's make sure we're talking about both sides, so to speak. We are definitely seeing a lot of Russian assets compromised, military, government. Amazingly, media. Russian media has been nailed. Anonymous has been the ones, as you point out, that stepped up, but a lot of volunteers have stepped up to the plate. What's interesting is that it's lopsided. We're not seeing quite the activity on the Ukraine target side like we are on the flip side, and not really sure exactly what's going on there. But the targets there seem to be banks and some government. I have some theories about that. Why that's the case, and I'll let you phrase it.
Well, Stel, I do want to get to those theories, but Vahid, Stel brought up Anonymous. First of all, tell us more about who we think they are and how successful these attacks on Russian websites and media have been.
Well, Anonymous is established collective of hacktivists. They're established in the historical sense. They've been in the hacktivist scene for quite a few years. Whenever a major geopolitical event occurs where hacktivists take side, Anonymous also arises and calls for attacks, typically of the distributed denial of service type, but of, in certain cases, of attacks of more sophistication and technical difficulty as well. As the name suggests, they are anonymous. It's a collective, it's not necessarily a group. And Anonymous is, of course, not the only hacktivist collective that's been active in the cyber conflict. There are numerous other hacktivist groups, as well as lone wolves. And also the Ukrainian government has also officially asked and supports hacktivist groups targeting Russian internet Russian organizations on the internet or the web.
like their governmental website and some of their state media. So Stel, you mentioned that it has been lopsided so far, and you're a little surprised that the Russian government, which is known for hacking attacks and cyber attacks, has not engaged so much. Are they holding their fire for a future date?
Well, very possibly. Right now, I'm going to guess not, but it could be a good strategy for them if you think about it. But whenever you attack, you play your hand. You not only show your tools and techniques, you're also letting the target know what vulnerabilities at least the attacker thinks they have. So it's possible, but I have to say though, Putin needs a win and he needs a one soon. So I really don't think that's the calculus there. I'm going to guess that it has more to do with the fact that there is a whole world against Russia. And, in fact, one of the assets that was successfully attacked was a nuclear power plant in Russia. And the Russian military is very busy, or the Russian cyber military, I should say, is very busy mitigating. And on top of that, I think their criminal gangs that they've used a lot for some of their cyber activity in the past have not really been quite as loyal to them as they thought they might be.
So, Vahid, what are the things that Ukrainians might need to watch out for? What are the most dangerous methods of cyber attacks that Russia could employ?
Well, to follow up on what Stel just mentioned, one of the theories about why Russia has not demonstrated their might in cyber warfare can be because Russian military and Russian intelligence has been using information collected from regular apps, regular services used by Ukrainians via the internet, including Google Maps and live traffic on Google Maps, and of course other sorts of crowdsourced sources of information. I believe that with the increasing tempo and violence of Russian military operations, the need for such intelligence is going to decrease. And one of the potential targets for cyber attacks is going to be the communications infrastructure, making sure that not only the soldiers in the military, but even the civilians are unable to communicate with each other, coordinate, and contribute to the resistance against a Russian invasion. And of course, other types of targets would include social media and the online presence of the Ukrainian government.
And I want to get to the social media aspect of it, Stel. Another thing that Russians have deployed has been social media trolls, and you see Facebook, Meta, I should say, Twitter removing hacked accounts that spread propaganda. Do you think those private companies can keep up with Russian efforts to do that?
I do, and it's amazing that they're willing to participate in what we want to call war, really. It's kind of a new day in some ways. We can look back in the past and find some parallels, but this is a new thing. And honestly, nobody's been more equipped than these large tech companies. I think they're not only going to do a good job with it, I think they're making a difference already.
All right, and there's some worries about cyber hacking here on the home front. For example, a planned discussion on Ukraine at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln was reportedly compromised after hackers broadcast explicit images during the event. Take a look.
We are right now being trolled and attacked because there are people in this world who don't believe in freedom. You being here, it's showing the support that the free world will win, that we are stronger than those trolls.
Vahid Bezadan, we only have a couple seconds left, but what is the potential for cyber hacking here in the United States?
I don't believe that a direct state-sponsored attack from Russia is likely, given the possibility for proliferation and escalation. However, hacktivist, patriotic hacking, and the similar types of breaches for propaganda, for again, patriotic purposes is very likely. So the risk factor has increased, and further vigilance is required.
Certainly, this is a new front opening up in these global conflicts. And our thanks to Stel Valavanis and Vahid Bezadan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.